For those of you that decide to use directional prints, it's totally possible to do it to make sure that everything is going the same direction. What you want to make sure you do before you either sew, draw lines, especially cut, is make sure that your fabric is going to go in the direction you want. So I'm using my stripes here that I use actually for my ribbons, but it works for our purposes in talking about directionals. So if I want my stripes to go horizontally or vertically, will determine how I should draw my line. So if I want I'm folding it here to make it line up. There we go. If I want my stripes to go in this direction, I would draw my line this way. If you fold your fabric to get that slight little crease, that will help you remember which way to draw them. Conversely, if I want my stripes to go the other direction, in this case horizontal, there, I would draw my line in the opposite direction. Finger press marks the line, and then you can either follow this to sew if you're comfortable with that, or you can draw your line for your flying geese. Either way. So if you're not careful, what you could end up with is your flying geese, or even the centers of your stars, going in opposite directions. Now, is that a problem? Absolutely not. It's up to you and how you would like them to go. So just something to keep in mind is that make sure that you are cognizant of how you should draw your lines and sew, or how you should cut your squares to make sure your directions are all going the same way if you want them to. We are at the step of trimming up our blocks that are going to make up the center of our ornaments. We have the 3.5 inch, and this is going to be the 2.5 inch. In order to square these up, it can get a little tricky, but I'm going to show you how to do that so your blocks come out nice and even, especially when you sew them together and everything matches up. We'll start with the 3.5 size. I already have a 3.5 inch ruler. If you don't have it, it's okay. You're going to apply the same technique with the 2.5 that we're going to do next with a bigger or different size ruler. It will still work out. I'm going to take my 3.5 inch ruler here, lay it on top. I'm going to make sure the corner point here matches up with the seam line of my two fabrics, and that the diagonal matches up with my seam line between the two halves of each triangle. So lining that up, looks good. Hold everything still. Use my rotary cutter here, and I'm going to trim the top and bottom. Make sure everything comes all the way off. I think I slid a little bit there. I will make sure that's cleaned up. Then I will rotate it, making sure everything is still aligned. There we go. Excellent. And hold everything in place. Do the side, the right side, and the top. I use the rotary blade to kind of smooth everything away to make sure I got it. And there you go, 3.5 inches. Next, for your 2.5 inch block, let me clear the space here. So my ruler is bigger, totally okay. You're going to find the markings for the square size that you're making, in this case 2.5, and there's that angle. You're going to, I'm going to turn this way, sorry. Yes, just so I can show you where it lines up this way first. Place your ruler on top. You're going to make sure where the 2.5 and 2.5, make sure you don't go over on the left side, and make sure that 2.5 line matches up with your seam line between the two smaller triangles. I'm going to make sure this is all lined up. My center diagonal line is along this seam line, and move up a little bit. There, now everything is good. I'm going to hold it in place, get my rotary, do the right and the top. Everything comes off, good. Then we're going to rotate. In this case, you're going to have to flip your ruler around. I do. It makes it easier for me. Others may have an easier time, but this is how I do it. So diagonal line matching up, the 2.5 line matches up with that center seam between the two smaller triangles. And I'm going to go ahead and cut the right side and the top. There. Okay, excellent. And now we have, close, our 2.5 and 3.5 inch squares. Once we cut them all, trim them all, we are going to start sewing them together. Assuming everything went well with your initial cutting of your wall hanging or throw runner, either one, you will have some leftover fabric in order to be able to create at least one more small woven star. I have taken the triangles that I cut from my flying geese and already made 4 more center squares. Then you can cut the 4 background rectangles needed to make an additional 4 flying geese. Using the triangles, this is not my favorite method of making flying geese, but it can be done. And lining up your fabric, oops, sorry, I will turn it this way so you can see. And lining up your fabric, making sure it's 1/4 of an inch past what would be the diagonal line here. And sew, flip, and press. You will have excess, so same process. You will still trim that away and press it open, and then go to the other side with the corresponding fabric that's supposed to be on the other side that you've chosen. Do all 4 of those, and next thing you know, you're going to have one more small woven star. Next, I will show you what to do with it. Awesome, so now my small woven star is now complete. If you have been able to get a large woven star, this will work for you as well, because you need to know what to do with it once it's done. As pretty as it is, it can't just sit in a box of orphan blocks. One idea is to make it into a pillow. It can be an added bonus decoration to your home for the holidays, or it would make a nice gift for your family, friends, teachers, whoever. So, in order to get started, you're going to get your background fabric, and you are going to be cutting 4 strips. The first 2 are going to go on the top and the bottom of the block, and then the second 2 will go on the left and the right sides of the block. When you cut the first 2 strips for the top and the bottom, you're going to make it even with the sides, so that same measurement on the top and the bottom, but the width and how wide you want to make it will totally depend on a couple things. One, do you have the small or large woven star? And the second thing would be, how big do you want your pillow? Most common sizes for a square pillow would be 16 inches square, 18 inches square, or 20 inches square. I have seen 14, but to have a nice size pillow, the first 3 are the most common. And those are the size forms that you can purchase. Now, can you make this any size you want? Absolutely. You can create your own pillow form. I'm sure there are plenty of tutorials out there on that. However, if you want to purchase a pre-made form, you are going to make your width of your background fabric in order to get to that size. Keep in mind, so your block is one size, and you're going to add to the top and the bottom. So whatever the difference is, if you want to do a 20-inch square pillow, you're going to take 20 inches minus your block square size. Then you want to divide it by 2 because you're creating 2 separate pieces. Don't forget to allow for your 1/4 inch seam on the top and bottom. And once you have added those 2 strips on top and bottom, then you will measure it again to make sure it is the correct width that you wanted. And your next 2 strips for the sides are going to be that length, And you would do the math the same way, it would be the same width actually as your first two on the sides. So let's just pretend hypothetically that you need to add 8 more inches total to make your pillow the square size that you want. I will say that you will need a 4-inch strip on one end and a 4-inch strip on the other. But wait, Cherise, I also need to allow for my seam allowance. Right, so you would do a 4¼ inch strip here and a 4¼ inch strip for the top. That would get you your nice even square, making sure that after you have the top and the bottom strips, just in case, be sure to measure because you never know. Things do happen, but ideally your math goes well. You're going to use that same, in my example, 4¼ inch strip on each side to get to my total of the square size pillow that I want. So hopefully you found this helpful, something extra to do with your scrap fabrics. I know you've loved them. You picked them for a reason. So let's use them to add other elements to our home to decorate for this Christmas or whichever holiday you celebrate.